Why did you take the decision to pile the bodies on top of each other in a freezer?
Well, I only had one deep freezer.
According to police reports, you ordered your eldest daughter to physically lift the body of one of your children.
No, I didn't tell her to lift the body.
How did you conceivably sleep at night?
I slept well.
And you feel no remorse for that?
I would kill him again.
This is the worst case I have ever seen. She knew, and the horror that child suffered. At that moment, that child knew. She knew she was being betrayed in the cruelest, most tragic, and sorrowful way that a child could ever be betrayed. She was being betrayed by her parent.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
This is Alex Murdaugh, a wealthy lawyer from South Carolina who's in court for his wife and son in cold blood. Alex Murdaugh was a prominent attorney who came from a powerful legal dynasty in South Carolina. His family had been serving as prosecutors for over a century in the region. However, his reputation and career came crashing down when he was exposed as a murderer, a thief, and a fraudster.
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately.
On June 7th, 2021, Murdaugh called 911 and reported that he had found his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, dead near the dog kennels on their large estate.
My wife and child got badly.
He claimed that they had been shot by unknown intruders.
I wanted to let you know because of the scene, I did go get a gun and bring it down here.
It's in your vehicle? Do you have any guns on you at all?
No, sir. It's leaning up against the side of my car.
Okay. You're fine, man. You're fine.
It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes, sir.
Police launched an investigation, but no suspects were arrested for over a year. In July 2022, Murdaugh was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon while committing a violent crime. The state prosecutors accused him of killing his wife and son with a rifle and a shotgun, allegedly to cover up his financial crimes and to gain sympathy from the public. If you thought Murdaugh would have been remorseful for his crimes, you're wrong. Because during his sentencing, things got even crazier. The trial began in September 2023 and lasted for 6 weeks. The prosecution presented strong evidence against Murdaugh, including this.
I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them.
How would you describe his hands?
They were clean. Clean.
How would you describe his arms?
They were clean.
How would you describe his t-shirt?
Clean.
Murdaugh's defense team tried to portray him as a loving husband and father who had been framed by the police. They also blamed his drug addiction for his erratic behavior and his lies to the investigators. Murdaugh himself took the stand and admitted that he had been addicted to painkillers for years and that he had stolen money from his clients to feed his habit. He also confessed that he had lied about his whereabouts on the night of the murders. However, he denied killing his wife and son, saying that he loved them more than anything.
I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Paul.
The jury did not believe him.
I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh, for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably loved so much.
They found him guilty of all charges after less than 3 hours of deliberation. He showed no emotion as the judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole.
I sentence you for the term of the rest of your natural life.
However, this wasn't the only time a convict was sentenced for his family. Take the case of Alexander Jackson.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Alexander Jackson, guilty of the offense of murder in the first degree.
22-year-old former college student who lived with his family in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. On June 15, 2021, Jackson called 911 and said that an intruder had shot him in the foot and another family member.
Someone broke into our house. I've been shot. My other family member's been shot. I need help immediately.
However, the truth was more shocking. Jackson had actually shot and killed his father, Jan, his mother, Melissa, and his sister, Sabrina, with a .22 caliber rifle that belonged to his father. Jackson had also shot himself in the foot to better sell his story of a black intruder in black clothes. When the police arrived at the scene, they found no evidence of a break-in or a robbery. However, Jackson had shot himself in the foot by leaving his palm prints on the rifle and gunshot residue on his hands. They searched the neighborhood and checked the security cameras, but they didn't find any trace of the intruder that Jackson had described. He was subsequently charged with the murder. If you thought Jackson had reached the depths of depravity with his crimes, wait until you see his shocking behavior during the proceedings. During the trial, Assistant Lynn County Attorney Monica Slaughter meticulously detailed the horrific nature of the crimes.
5 shots in total for Jan Jackson. Sabrina Jackson, and the defendant got closer and shot her. 3 shots were fired at Melissa Jackson as she laid in that bed.
Each victim had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, with some inflicted at close range. The prosecution argued that Jackson had orchestrated the murders to benefit financially and to cover up his actions, and had gone to great lengths to blame someone else. Jackson's defense team attempted to challenge the case, emphasizing its circumstantial nature and questioning the absence of concrete physical evidence.
And doubt is what we ask of you as jurors when you evaluate the evidence in a case, is to look at it critically, use your common sense, because this is a case of circumstantial evidence. What that means is that even though the law makes no distinction, the evidence has to be so compelling as to remove all reasonable doubt. And as you listen to Ms. Slaughter this morning, the one thing that she didn't say is why. Why would Alexander Jackson kill his family? It makes no sense. There's simply no motive for Alex to do this, and no motive has ever been proven.
They maintained that there was no motive for Jackson to harm his family. However, attorney Monica Slaughter had this to say.
Motive? The fact that he only has $30 left over? Is the money the motive? Is the fact that he's going to inherit houses and assets and all of that? Is that motive? I don't know, but guess what? I don't have to prove that motive. There's never going to be a good enough reason why Alexander Jackson executed his entire family.
In the end, the jury found Alexander Jackson guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. Prosecutors requested that these life sentences be served consecutively, ensuring that Jackson would never have the possibility of parole. The judge agreed, and Jackson was sentenced to life imprisonment and also ordered to pay $450,000 in restitution. As the verdict was read, Jackson displayed no visible emotion.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Alexander Jackson, guilty of the offense of murder in the first degree.
However, just when you thought you'd seen it all, another convict surpasses Jackson's wild display.
Get your hands out of here.
On June 15, 2023, in Monroe Township, Ohio, 32-year-old Chad Dorman fatally shot his 3 sons, Clayton, Hunter, and Chase. He also shot his stepdaughter. Dorman returned home early from work that fateful day, requested his wife and 3 sons to join him in the primary bedroom, retrieved his gun, and started shooting. Amidst the chaos, the wife desperately tried to help Hunter while urging the other 2 sons to run. Unfortunately, they couldn't escape their father, who pursued them and completed his evil plan. As if Dorman's crime was not outrageous enough, his reaction when he was arrested was even more shocking.
Stand up! Stand up now! Stand up! Stand the fuck up! Get your hands out of here.
Law enforcement later arrived at the scene and arrested Dorman. However, he showed no remorse and readily admitted to the atrocity.
Can I roll over? I ain't gonna hurt you. I ain't gonna hurt nobody.
It was later revealed that he had been planning this heinous act since October 2022. Dorman was charged with 9 counts of aggravated murder, 1 for each gunshot that took life. In addition, he also faces 8 counts of kidnapping and 4 counts of felonious assault. On June 16th, Dorman appeared in court for the first time.
That these are men and women with families, children, feelings, emotions. They held these boys in their arms knowing there was nothing they could do to save them.
The prosecution, led by Mark Tokova, are looking for the death penalty.
This is a death penalty case, and my goal is to have this man executed for slaughtering these 3 little boys.
Dorman's case is still ongoing. However, let's compare the jaw-dropping reaction of Dorman to the astonishing outburst by 22-year-old Blake Jefferson, who was in court for fatally stabbing his 48-year-old mother, Deidre, multiple times in their Houston, Texas home. Reports suggest that Blake Jefferson had overdosed on his mother's prescription medication before the attack, but there was no evidence to back it up. Blake had struggled with his mental health, and his mother had become worried. Before the attack, Blake had visited a pastor, explaining that he was experiencing spiritual visions. Later that night, on December 16, 2016, around 2 a.m., Deidre called her own mother, expressing deep concern over Blake's erratic behavior. Tragically, this call turned into a scene of horror as Deidre screamed that Blake was attacking her. Deputies arrived at the residence only to discover her lifeless body in the garage.
I mean, it's a sad situation. It's a few days to Christmas. I mean, the lady just literally put up, the Christmas decorations and stuff. So it's bad. I mean, your own child killing you.
After the heinous act, Blake Jefferson sought refuge in a neighbor's home, hiding in a closet until the authorities arrived. Concerns about his mental state and the presence of drugs in his system led to him being hospitalized for a suspected drug overdose. As if Blake's crime was not outrageous enough, his reaction in court was even more dramatic. Blake was charged with murder. During his trial, this is how Blake reacted to his charges. Following testimonies from forensic psychologists, Blake was found not guilty by reason of insanity in November of 2017. He had a different reaction this time. His family members supported him despite all the chaos.
He was brilliant and an humble young man, very smart. He was an all-round individual. I mean, good in sports, good in school. Very respectful. He's still respectful. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. It's always been that way with him.
However, he would be placed in a mental health hospital until he gets better. While Blake's behavior was shocking, it's nothing compared to the utter coldness exhibited by 33-year-old Heather Maxim Barron and her 37-year-old boyfriend, Kareem Leva, at the Los Angeles County Superior Court. The couple are in court for the death of Heather's son, Anthony Avalos. Anthony Avalos suffered physical and emotional abuse at the hands of his mother and her boyfriend. The abuse ultimately led to his death. The signs of abuse were evident all over his body when his lifeless body was discovered. Anthony's relatives revealed that both Barron and Leva exhibited intense homophobia, even using slurs against Anthony because Anthony had remarked that he liked boys. This abuse was part of a pattern of neglect and cruelty that went unaddressed for far too long. Shockingly, despite numerous complaints and warnings from teachers, relatives, police, and counselors,
He and his brothers and sisters, because his mom was hitting them and locking them up in their room for long hours.
That they, she keeps them in time for a long time, and then they get in trouble, and she won't give them food or something.
The Department of Child and Family Services only intervened 8 times over a 4-year period, missing opportunities to prevent this tragedy. While the magnitude of Leva and Barron's crimes is daunting, their courtroom behavior will leave you in disbelief. The court found Kareem Leva responsible for the lethal abuse, while Heather Barron was found guilty of aiding and abetting him for over 6 years. During the trial, they unsuccessfully argued that Anthony's injuries were self-inflicted. The emotional impact of this case was evident, as family members delivered tearful victim impact statements expressing their grief and the profound loss of Anthony, who was described as full of life and love.
Dear Judge, my name is Matthew Barron. I am 8 years old and I miss my cousin Anthony. Heather, who's supposed to be my aunt, took Anthony away from us. Heather is an evil monster and she deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison. I don't forgive Heather for taking my cousin's life, and I hope she gets beat up in jail.
Me and Anthony were so close in age. We were always with each other. Now I find myself either playing with the younger kids at family events or just by myself. Now I'm missing my other half. That half of me will always be empty. Anthony was full of love. He was full of laughter and life.
The victim impact statement was so touching that Barron began crying. However, such emotions were beyond Leva, who had time to laugh. Both defendants were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Each defendant is ordered to serve life without the possibility of parole.
They were also ordered to pay victims' compensation funds. They remained unremorseful. However, While Kareem Leyva and Heather Barron's behavior raised eyebrows, it's nothing compared to the explosive actions of Michelle Blair during her trial for multiple murders in Michigan. Michelle Blair was a mother of 4 who murdered 2 of her own children and kept their bodies in a freezer for nearly 3 years. This horrifying discovery was made on March 24, 2015. Blair was evicted from her apartment due to unpaid rent. During the eviction process, court officials found a freezer in Blair's living room containing the remains of her 2 children, Stephen Barry and Stoney Blair, the medical examiner ruling their deaths as homicides. But brace yourself for an even more disturbing revelation: Blair's twisted justification for the brutal slaying. At her trial, Blair confessed to the murders of Stephen and Stoney, claiming that she did so because she believed they were abusing her youngest son, Matthew.
There is no evidence in this case that any of the younger children or the younger child was sexually abused. Abundant evidence that the surviving children were physically abused by this defendant.
That's a lie. My son's own mouth. Hold on. No, Miss Blair.
However, these allegations were never substantiated. During the trial, Blair showed no remorse for her actions and maintained that she did what she believed was right.
I'm freely giving myself and accepting life in prison. My son is worth that to me.
In June 2015, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder and received a life sentence.
You're therefore sentenced to the Michigan Department of Corrections for the rest of your life without the possibility of parole, meaning, of course, that you will never get out.
I'm accepting life in prison. My son is worth that to me.
However, this wasn't the only time a convict freaked out during their sentencing. Take, for example, the case of Rita Pangalangan, a 53-year-old woman from South Carolina who was charged with murder in connection to the 2019 of Christina Pangalangan. Christina, who had cerebral palsy, lost her life to heat stroke on August 5, 2019, after being left unattended for hours inside a hot Volkswagen car. Rita Pangalangan had abandoned her disabled daughter in a car parked outside her boyfriend Larry King's home for an appalling 4 to 5 hours. It was discovered that Rita and her boyfriend had been under the influence of meth on that fateful day. As a result, both Pangalangan and King were charged with the murder of the However shocking Rita's crimes were, wait till you see how she handled herself in court. On Friday, September 1st, 2023, the jury found Rita Pangalangan and Larry King guilty of the murder.
We, the jury, in the above caption, on the charge of murder of Christina Ann Pangalangan, find the defendant guilty. Oh my God! Oh my God! We, the jury, in the above caption case, on the charge of
Circuit Judge Clifton Newman sentenced Rita to 37 years in prison for the murder charge and also gave her an additional 20 years for the inflicting great bodily harm charge, making everything a total of 57 years. Judge Newman ruled that both sentences would run concurrently.
She'd be committed to the State Department of Correction for a period of 37 years on murder, 20 years on great bodily injury. Sentences will run concurrent and you'll receive credit for time served.
Similarly, Larry King, too, was convicted of murder in this heart-wrenching case. He was sentenced to 32 years and an additional 20 years for the charge of great bodily harm.
That you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for a period of 32 years. Great bodily injury, the sentence is 20 years. Sentences will run concurrent with credit for any time that you've already served.
They are serving their sentences in prison. However, it's not the first time a convict has lost control in court. Just like what happened in the notorious case of Keith Ferguson, who was in Kalkaska, Michigan court for the heart-wrenching murders of his wife and father-in-law. Ferguson had pleaded guilty to the first-degree and second-degree murder of his estranged wife, Tiffany Ferguson, and her father, James Weber. After fatally shooting his wife, Ferguson brought his children to his father-in-law's house before shooting the poor man. Fortunately, the children managed to escape to a neighbor's home, but Ferguson then broke into another neighbor's house, where he barricaded himself before he eventually surrendered to the police. The reason behind these gruesome acts was believed to be Tiffany's recent filing for divorce. His disdain for the court and the judge had been evident in previous court appearances.
you. Okay. Well.
While the crimes committed by Ferguson are reprehensible, their conduct in court will make your blood run cold. During this arraignment, he continued to disrupt proceedings, refusing to cooperate, and punctuating the courtroom with profane outbursts.
Okay, well, I'm not getting into any detail of what happened.
If you want to be guilty, you have to say what you did.
I'm not saying all right? Because of the respect and safety of my children, I'm not saying nothing, because they're gonna see this. They don't need to hear that. Understand what I'm saying? You know, let's just make this painless and not. Give me my 100 years or whatever, and give me the out of here.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well, do it!
Despite several felony charges being dropped as part of his guilty plea, which included kidnapping and carrying explosives, there was no excusing Ferguson's actions.
We have two murders. We have issues of flight, home invasion, kidnapping. And I'm gonna set it as a $10 million bond.
During the sentencing, Carla, a friend of Tiffany Ferguson, delivered an emotional victim impact statement, emphasizing the emotional pain caused by Ferguson's actions, particularly for his own children.
You loved them so much, you murdered their mother and grandfather. Why? Do you have any idea of the emotional pain your kids have suffered and will continue to suffer their entire lives? I know we are supposed to forgive, but right now all I feel for you is hatred.
When Ferguson was given the opportunity to speak, he displayed no remorse or apology. His callousness was deeply unsettling.
Can I get you to stand up there at the podium, please? All right, I need to have you raise your right hand for me.
I'm leaving this
Okay,
part.
all right.
Just put me back in my cell.
Okay, stop.
Right.
In the end, Judge George Mertz sentenced him to life in prison with no possibility of parole. However, as we saw Ferguson's discontent with their sentence, it brings to mind the strikingly similar response of Ronnie O'Neal.
You think I'm here to play around with y'all?
Ronnie O'Neal was charged with multiple murders in Tampa, Florida. He was convicted for the brutal killings of his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and their daughter, Nevaeh. He also stabbed his son, Ronnie, and set their house on fire in an attempt to cover up his crimes. Thankfully, his son survived and managed to escape the fire. In a chilling 911 call in March 2018, Kenyatta reported Ronnie's disturbing behavior, but the call abruptly ended.
Hello, what's up? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Ronnie.
Ma'am, hello. Hello.
Shortly after, Ronnie called 911 himself, and this was what he reported.
911, what is your emergency?
Hey, I just been attacked by some white demons inside, and she tried to kill me.
While the crimes committed by O'Neal are reprehensible, his conduct in court will make your blood run cold. During the trial, O'Neal represented himself, and this is how it went.
I did kill Kenyatta Barron. But I want you to tell it like it is if you gonna tell it.
Judge Michelle Cisco had to reprimand him for his disrespectful behavior and warned him against further outbursts.
Mr. O'Neal,
All right.
Listen, stop.
All right.
Listen to me.
I'm not
You're not going to raise your voice again.
I'm
You're
not going to raise my
your
voice again. I'm not.
O'Neal went as far as to cross-examine his own son, who had survived his brutal attack, and bravely testified against him during the trial.
How you doing, Ron?
Good.
It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Did you see me shoot your mom?
No.
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
As for whether he is sorry for what he did, let's hear from O'Neal.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
However, he expressed condolences for the loss suffered by the victim's family.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Judge Cisco visibly affected by the evidence presented, described the case as the worst she had ever seen.
19 years I've been at this job. I've seen human beings killed at the hands of others in every way imaginable. This is the worst case I have ever seen.
Ultimately, Judge Sisko followed the jury's recommendation, and O'Neill was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole for the murder charges. Additionally, he received 30 years for arson and 30 years for each aggravated child abuse charge, totaling an additional 90 years in prison.
On count 1, Mr. O'Neill, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to life in prison. On count 6, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty to aggravated child abuse, sentence you to 30 years in prison, to run consecutive to counts 1 through 5. And on count 7, resisting arrest without violence, I will adjudicate you guilty, sentence you to time served. Credit for time served is 1,224 days.
However, when emotions run high in court, the actions of O'Neill and Jacob Morgan leave us questioning sanity itself. Jacob Morgan is a 17-year-old who was charged with murder and arson. In March 2015, Morgan started a fire that resulted in the heartbreaking of his brother, Joshua Hill. During the trial, Morgan tearfully pleaded guilty to starting the fire that claimed Joshua's life. However, his parents staunchly defended his innocence, insisting that he loved his younger brother and would never intentionally harm him. They claimed he was autistic and made efforts to stop the fire.
He, under the umbrella term of autism in the DSM-5, the psychiatrist did not find him autistic, but with autistic tendencies.
The case presented conflicting narratives, with investigators alleging that Morgan showed malice by not calling for help or attempting to save Joshua during the fire. They also mentioned Morgan's fascination with fire, citing previous incidents involving flames.
In his own handwriting, your son, quote, says, "I didn't cook, burn, or light anything at all. Haven't played with fire. There it is, in 2 weeks."
However, Morgan's parents argued that their son's confession came under duress after a lengthy, unrecorded interrogation.
They actually took us out of the room before they took him, so we did not even know at first that he was being interrogated.
They believed that his developmental issues and communication difficulties contributed to the varying accounts he provided about how the fire started.
We told them that he has learning disabilities and had trouble understanding some of the more complex questions that I was sure they were asking him.
The court sentenced him to 15 years in prison. The charges included involuntary manslaughter, unlawful conduct towards a child, and third-degree arson. Morgan broke down in tears upon hearing the verdict.
I believe the state has, in fact, met their burden. So therefore, I am going to find that there is probable cause to charge the individual with the bound over for General Sessions Court for both charges.
If you thought these reactions were shocking, you'd be amazed at this video of child killers reacting to life sentences.